Hi everyone, welcome to ESOC TV. I hope you've had a great day, as I have. We have a great group of people here, and we'll briefly introduce ourselves. My name is Pooja Kathri. I'm a stroke neurologist at Yale University.
Andrew Demchuk, stroke neurologist, University of Calgary.
Smriti, Agarwal, stroke neurologist at Cambridge, UK.
Michael Knoflach, also stroke neurologist at the Medical University of Innsbruck.
Jean-Marc, Olivot, stroke neurologist at the University of Toulouse in France.
And I'll pass things over to my co-anchor, Jean-Marc, to talk to you a little bit about some great global work going on in the field.
What we do have in common is that we are all involved in a stroke research network. 10 years ago, the ESO launched the ESO Trial Alliance, named ESOTA, to try to facilitate ongoing research trial between the different countries in Europe. And as part of it, we also started to do some evaluation of the funding of research in Europe that will be presented by Professor Agarwal and Professor Knoflach. And we are also member of an other alliance that is international, that is shared by Professor Kathri and Professor Demchuk, called GAINS. And they will give you some more insight into those institutions. You want to talk about the poll?
Yeah. So at ESOTA, 1 or 2 years ago, we decided we need a bit more information about stroke funding and the funding landscape in Europe. We all know that much of innovation in stroke care comes from investigator-initiated trials, especially in a time where you do have medications that there's not much industry interest. You need public funding to advance stroke care. And the first step is try to find out what the funding landscape in Europe is. So we contacted all ESOTA trialists networks at the 14 countries, 16 networks, and have a very brief questionnaire about how many stroke randomized controlled trials were applied for in their country and how many were funded. And by that, we tried to get a bit an idea about the funding landscape, because we all agree, we have the feeling that stroke funding needs improvement. But we needed some evidence for that.
So what we found in the survey was out of the 14 countries, we got responses from 13. And our main take-home messages from the survey was that actually there was a huge variation across the networks in terms of the applications that went in. So 2 out of the 13 that responded, there were no applications that went in. And out of the countries that replied, the application that went in, there was a huge variation in the amount of applications that were successful. And some of the key things that came out were that ESOTA could probably be a platform where networks could help each other, and perhaps the ones that are more successful could provide some learning points for the ones that are not as successful, and collaboration would be a win-win for everybody, and ESOTA certainly could be the platform for that. One of the other messages that came out of our survey was that information regarding funding and the resources that go into clinical trials is not very transparent and not very easy to find. That is another role for platforms like ESOTA and perhaps GAINS as well, to see whether we could provide something like a repository of all that information, where trialists, particularly young trialists, could approach the platform and learn from it, and it could be a source of information where information could be transparently found, and then the lessons learned from that could be used to inform advocacy policy, fundraising, perhaps at the European level, GAINS level, and a more global level. And perhaps you can.
Funding is a big challenge. Certainly in GAINS, we've made some attempts to try to gather and discuss the funding issue, and it is a vast one. There's no easy solution, but I think these surveys that you've done are helpful in terms of showing particularly the disparities, which is important, I think, as we kind of move forward in that regard.
Well, we'll move over to talking about GAINS. ESOTA has been a wonderful model of seeing people in all different countries working together. Stroke trials are not possible without that teamwork. Treatment effects are getting smaller. the questions are global. And so I had the pleasure of joining Andrew in the GAINS network, which, if I'll get this abbreviation right, was Global Alliance of Independent Networks of Stroke. And it's a loose alliance, and I'll say personally, it's been just a wonderful way to make the world smaller, and maybe you can chat a little more about that.
Yeah, it's basically a network of networks. So we're just basically trying to kind of find little ways where we can all help one another. It's not an organization. It doesn't have bylaws or a board. It's just a loose affiliation where we get together and try to help maybe deal with a few of the bigger problems. So, areas where I think we've made some inroads is particularly around mentorship. We've had a number of early career workshops over the years, really trying to bring that new generation of young investigators into the trial space. And some of them have turned out to be pretty good trialists actually since. Yeah. And so that's been pretty exciting. We are planning our next workshop at the World Stroke Organization Conference in Barcelona in the fall. It'll be on the first day of the meeting at the time of the training courses. So any young people who are interested in learning more on early career and mentorship and that sort of thing, please come. I think you'll enjoy the event, and it will be free.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that it is free, that it is during the conference. Having been to this myself multiple times, I can tell you it's fun and interesting. And so I really hope people will keep that in mind and know that they are welcome to join. We have a website. It's really easy. You could put into Google GAINS stroke and you'll find us. So don't hesitate to do that. I'll highlight a couple other points and maybe you can add here. One is that we've been doing a virtual global trials forum, and the idea there has been, in the past, it's been about pitching new trial ideas where you would like other countries to join you in ideas. And the other has been to talk more broadly about our networks and barriers and sharing best practices. So we're looking forward to one of our next ones actually being about the great work you're doing in ESOTA in bringing people together and understanding the environment and trying to make it easier for people to do clinical trials.
I think one of the other places where these forums can help is also navigating regulation, and perhaps you can talk to that from the Canadian experience, because there are a lot of common problems that everyone comes across.
Yeah, regulations are very country dependent in many regards, but we do, when we come together at these trial forums, actually there's a broad discussion around, and they can be even from the design stage right through the implementation stage of these trials. We've had a few experiences with the trials forum where a principal investigator has brought forward a trial where there's only 1 or 2 countries working in it, but there are people in the audience in 2 or 3 other countries that are perfect fits for their trial. Suddenly that trial is a 5-country trial and boosts enrollment and that sort of thing. So I think where we win with these sort of things is just the connection, and the communication that just hasn't happened for a variety of reasons, but by having these forums, we can address that.
I'll mention one thing that ESOTA had that we sort of brought more broadly into GAINS was you've had this really cool website where you link each country and its regulatory agencies for ethics approvals and regulatory approvals. And so we've taken what they have and trying to broaden it globally. And so I think there are a lot of opportunities like that you all have driven that I think can be taken globally and are really exciting.
It's also very important that the GAINS and ESOTA networks together as a network of networks, a large one, a bit smaller one, and we kind of learn a lot from each other and how to lobby for stroke research for randomized controlled trials. And there are good news from the questionnaire we've said, because there are many really good ideas out there for stroke RCTs, and many countries, I think 11 countries got RCTs, at least one RCT funded. So there is an opportunity to fund RCT, and we should apply for more randomized controlled trials. I know it's very painful to organize everything, to write a grant application, but it doesn't make sense not to do it at all. So I think we all should rush forward. If we don't apply for trials, we'll never get them.
It's so true. We're in an era now of sample sizes of 1,500, 2,000 patients. A single funding agency might fund 500 patients, right? A couple of $1 million trial, right? So the success is when 2 groups can bring together at least 2 grants. Now you've got the funding to make it work, right? That only happens when individuals are connected. And these sort of things like ESOTA and GAINS bring the connections together.
last thing that is also experience sharing very important for us. So maybe we put some information about the regulation. We did the poll, but what is also very interesting experience to pick up from overseas are two up and running platforms on which US investigators, but also investigators from the entire world can join and participate. And we really do think that this type of structure can really help to perform those big trials that even a large sample size, as you say, 500, but maybe sometimes we require more, or at least we need also some more flexibility, versatility can really help us. So if we can use those last 4 minutes, maybe to, if you can tell us a little bit more about the STEP and the global platform. Sure.
Yeah, so the idea with STEP was that we were pitching trial ideas after Dawn and Diffuse 3 in the extended, those were positive in the extended time window, and the idea was, okay, we've got these great wins, what are the next trials? And so suddenly we wanted to do large core, we wanted to do distal, we wanted to do neuroprotection, and our government agencies were saying, there's only so much money, we need more efficiency, we need to be able to do these trials quickly, and we need to not do every question every 5 years, and 5 years with a dismantling and then restructuring. So the idea of a platform trial is that it's one statistical inferential hypothesis, and there are multiple questions put in there. So the STEP platform is specifically a factorial design and can ask multiple questions at once. It grew out of NIH StrokeNet, which was also an infrastructure that's sort of built into the platform. And we have a few questions open now, but like Jean-Marc said, we are able to take more questions, and we're developing them now from our colleagues internationally as well as from industry. And so it's good to see the world get smaller that way too with these platform trials. I think Global Act is another wonderful example.
Yeah, with Act Global, the vision there was essentially, we've all struggled with the effort and machinery required to set up a trial and run it, and then sadly watch that machinery be dismantled and then have to start all over again. And so we felt very strongly that we need to develop a basic infrastructure and then create what we call domains, which are different trial questions, where we can sustain that infrastructure, work through those questions over time, and then add new ones and take them off as they finish. And therefore have an economy of scale, essentially, to be able to do things a bit more efficiently, not lose the momentum, and be able to move forward. So we've launched Act Global now in several countries and are just ramping it up with 4 trial questions that we're funding. So we'll see where it goes from here.
So it's very important and maybe in those uncertain time that we are able to work together and to move forward on stroke research, and rather than spending lots of amount of money, maybe also making stroke research more efficient and stroke treatment more accessible. So GAINS and Network and ESOTA are also open to expand to countries that maybe are not usually running trials, and we are extending our network every year almost toward the east, and this is the same thing for GAINS. You're having many countries from all over the world.
Yeah, and I think that's worth just kind of reinforcing GAINS, and I think the same is for ESOTA. These are open invitation networks. So if you're in a country where you're developing a network or thinking about developing one, we welcome you. It's really just about sharing best practices and exchanging ideas. I think the relationships that we build are probably the most important thing that happens out of these organizations.
Yeah, so we also will help you endorse, like if you're submitting a grant, you want to set up a clinical trial network. GAINS is very supportive of any countries that want to do this, and will offer our sort of backing in terms of saying, hey, let's do this, and we want you to be successful, and that maybe helps you along the way with the grant submissions and whatnot.
Yeah, quite literally a letter of support, to be explicit. So yeah, these are the kinds of things that we've been doing to work together.
Same thing, ESOTA is endorsing trial that we think sound, and that's also maybe something that that can be helpful to help to get the funding. Unfortunately, we are not a funding agency, but we might help you to get the good funding and to find a good partner to help you to launch the good trial with the good response to the question you are asking for your patients. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.